Okay, the Caps, games number 1 through number 3 against Tampa Bay. Let's talk about it. The Capitals have completely dominated this series so far, which is really funny because nobody was really giving them a chance coming into this series, as Tampa Bay was basically the best team in the Eastern Conference pretty much all season long. So nobody really was giving the Caps a chance at all coming into this series. We heard that the series was supposed to be over very quickly in favor of Tampa Bay, and really just that the Caps were going to be the ones getting dominated. So far, through 3 games, it has been the exact opposite. Yes, Tampa Bay does have 1 win out of those 3 games, but we'll talk about that in a second. The Caps, they've been dominating on offense, on defense, goaltending, on special teams outside, of course, of game number 3, in which the Caps finally had a game in which they did not score a power play goal. But other than game number 3, the Caps power play has been extremely strong. And yeah, really just the even strength play is something that I think has surprised pretty much everyone other than myself, in that the Caps have just been completely dominant at 5-on-5. They've had the puck in the Tampa Bay end pretty much for the entirety of the series so far, and really just in every facet of the game, it's just been complete domination by the Caps. So the only bad Capital stat so far in these playoffs is the number of pizzas and beers that I have consumed since I figured out that that was the lucky winning combination after our double overtime victory in Game 3 against the Columbus Blue Jackets in the first round. What started off as comfort food in anticipation of us inevitably losing Game 3 in Columbus and going on to get swept in what would have been another epic playoff letdown, it turned into something more when we won that game in double OT on the type of fluke bounce that always seems to go against the Capitals. I decided to have pizza and beers for game 4 of that series as well. And then when we won game 4 too, I just kept going and our Caps followed my lead as they rattled off 4 straight victories to defeat the Blue Jackets in 6 games in a turn of events that had never before been seen in 100 years of NHL history. So it goes without saying that I stuck with the pizza and beer combo against the Penguins as well, and of course the entire hockey world and probably even people in Uganda know what happened there. Was the exorcism felt around the world, and given that it was something that had not happened in 20 plus years, one can only assume that the pizza and beer had everything to do with it. So here I am, getting fat. But I always hear NHL players talking about how you have to sacrifice the body in order to win in the playoffs, and I can only assume this is exactly what they're talking about. I am sacrificing my body in order to get the Caps to the promised land. As for Game 3, it was a bit of an anomaly, really, as far as this series and really as far as the entire playoffs goes for the Caps. And I think that the Caps should treat it as such. They should treat it as nothing more than just an anomaly. As again, the Caps dominated the play at 5-on-5, having the puck in the Bolts' end of the rink for basically the entire game. And the Caps did outshoot the Bolts 38-23. That the Caps were able to get such a huge advantage in shots on goal, even with the Bolts getting the majority of the power plays, just hammers home the point that the Caps have been nothing short of dominant at 5-on-5, which the experts predicted would be an advantage for the Bolts in this series. That has not been the case, as the Caps are basically doing whatever they want at 5-on-5, and the Bolts cannot seem to stop them. I thought that the Caps played well again in Game 3, but the loss can be summed up as the Bolts getting a couple of power play goals and the Caps not having any bounces go their way on this particular night. It's hockey, it happens. No team is going 16-0 through the playoffs, so just rest, regroup, refocus, refuel, continue being dominant at 5-on-5, and stay out of the fucking penalty box, and the series will be over quickly. But not to take anything away from the Bolts, of course. They are a very good team. It's just that the Caps have been playing so well in these playoffs. we really saw it in games 1 and 2 on the road in Tampa Bay. Like I said, everything clicking for the Capitals right now. We've got the offense. They scored 4 goals in the first game against Tampa Bay. They scored another 6 goals in the second game. So 10 goals through the first 2 games of the series. On the road, like I said, in Tampa Bay, the defense has been clicking. The goaltending obviously has been stellar. And the power play has been hot as well, again, outside of game number 3. So really, the Caps just have to keep doing what they're doing, and like I said, just treat Game 3 as what it was, nothing more than an anomaly. Get back on track in Game number 4. And speaking of Game 3, I think we all know anyways what the real problem was in Game number 3, and his name is Pierre McGuire. I just want to show you guys, because I brought a special shirt for this, move my hair here. Brought a special shirt for this particular broadcast. Yeah, there we go. And yes, that is right. Pierre, unfortunately, was back on the broadcast and making our ears bleed once again for the entirety of game number 3. He was not present, of course, during games 1 and 2. So again, I think it's pretty clear what the problem was for the Caps during game number 3. Now, speaking of Pierre, I do want to talk about NBC and others for just a minute here, because here we have all of these so-called expert analysts who were trashing the Caps before the playoffs began, and then they were saying that we were finished against Columbus, and then they were saying that we'd never get past Pittsburgh, and then they were saying that we didn't have a snowball's chance in hell against Tampa Bay, and then all of a sudden, the minute that we start off the series against the Lightning by going into Tampa and blowing the motherfucking roof off, winning both games on the road in blowout fashion, scoring a touchdown in one of those games, all of a sudden, all of those same analysts are now scrambling to hop on the Caps bandwagon and act as if they've been there all along. It's pretty pathetic, but we're being picked as the Stanley Cup favorites now, and I have to say, listen, okay? Listen to me. All of you bandwagon hopping analysts can get lost. We don't want you and your jinxie voodoo crap. Whoever you guys pick to win the cup every year, you're always wrong, and they always lose, usually immediately. Because here's a hot take. Y'all don't have a fucking clue what you're talking about. You guys don't know what you're doing, so please take your black magic crap elsewhere and go jinx somebody else with your expert opinions, okay? Expert, I use that term loosely. Garlic, okay? Witchcraft, be gone. NBC, get the fuck out of here. There's no more room on this bandwagon, okay? Okay, the extracurricular activities and the supplemental discipline, or lack thereof, on the Bolts side in this series, that's what I want to talk about next. So Michael Kempney, who had what I would call a regrettable cross-check on Cedric Paquette in game number 2, and he was fined for it, which I do think was the right call. He had another cross-check in game 3, this time on Tyler Johnson, but this one was not bad. This one was a cross-check that happens 200 times in any playoff game, and if you want to give him a 2-minute minor penalty for it, which they did, then sure, that's questionable, but sure, go for it. But what I don't like is Tyler Johnson laying on the ice for 5 minutes, acting as if he just got gunned down by an assault rifle just to draw a penalty. And if you don't think he was acting, think again, as he was perfectly fine to come out and participate on the ensuing power play. This stuff is just garbage. It's trash. Quit hockey and go for an Oscar if this is the way that you want to do things. And by the way, I've noticed that this is a bit of a pattern with the Lightning, as Paquette actually did the exact same thing in game number 2. And he was also perfectly fine after laying on the ice crying, fine enough to skate by the Caps bench and blow them a kiss, which, as Nick Kypreos said on Sportsnet afterwards, is utter garbage. When you've just been laying on the ice acting like you're dead, and then you go skate past the bench and blow them a kiss. The Bolts, are not winning any respect from hockey fans that way, as you can clearly tell by the barrage of comments on Twitter. And Bolts fans, what are you doing? Crying bloody murder over the Kempney cross-check on Johnson, but then you have no problem with either of these two plays. So first of all, Kucherov is a dirty little bitch who should have been suspended in round 1 against the New Jersey Devils for his hit on Vatanen. And then he goes and he does this because he's frustrated, because he's forgotten how to score goals. And everyone in the hockey universe knows that this is garbage, and everyone was letting it be known after this game. Now, here's the thing. By the NHL's own rulebook, any kick directed at another player is an automatic match penalty, and a match penalty is an automatic 1-game suspension. Kucherov was not given anything for his kick on Connolly, not even a 2-minute minor, and that is a steaming hot pile of crap. Remember against the Penguins when I talked about the Department of Player Safety just making it up as they go along? Well, hold on, because I'm not done yet. Fast forward to Game 3, where Anton Strawman makes this dangerous and dirty hit on Tom Wilson. Let's watch.
Hopefully Tom Wilson is okay. And that's one of those there where you got to play the puck or angle to get shoulder on shoulder. And a boarding call and a power play coming after a couple of really good shifts.
Bolts fans, of course, are trying to justify this by saying it was just retaliation for a clean hit that Wilson had made on Johnson earlier in the game. Well, guess what? You don't avenge a clean hit with a dirty one. That's just not the way that you do things. And the fact that it's retaliation is not a justification for it and a reason to not suspend him. In fact, it's almost always the opposite, because retaliation lets us know that it was premeditated and intentional, which in this case it certainly was. Again, Bolts fans, I don't really understand, trying to justify it by saying it was retaliation. Wilson made a clean hit on Tyler Johnson. You don't avenge that with a dirty, cheap play like this. And certainly the fact that it was retaliation is not a reason to not suspend the guy. In fact, like I said, almost always the opposite. So here, let's look at the hit again. Now, the 3 things that the NHL has been telling us are unacceptable. 1, he sees numbers the whole way. 2, he leaps into the hit. And 3, he hits the head first. And yeah, Strawman amazingly manages to check all 3 of those boxes all on one hit. So let me ask you this. Where is the phone call from George Peros? As Tom Wilson pointed out, you've been telling him all along in all of your meetings and conversations with him that these are the 3 things that are unacceptable. No exceptions, and yet now when we see a Tampa Bay player do it against a Washington player, suddenly there's an exception? Suddenly it's acceptable? Something doesn't smell right here, and I've been saying it all along, the league has no problem rewriting their own rule book mid-playoffs, mid-series, so long as it suits them. They change it by the day, depending on who the offending player is, which team he plays for, what's at stake, etc. And it's garbage. Absolute garbage. Either suspend everyone for that hit or don't suspend anyone. You can't just make it up as you go along. You're not Donald Trump. Now, to give some insight into how the NHL Department of Player Safety makes these decisions, we think we've figured it out here. Let's take a look. Okay, boys, you ready? Heads is no supplemental discipline, and tails, likewise, is no supplemental discipline. Here we go. Oh, look at that. What do you know? No supplemental discipline. Okay, Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson, let's see what we've got. Oh, 3-game suspension. Oh, $2 million fine. What do you mean the maximum fine is $5,000? I don't care. Whatever. I don't care. Here at the Department of Player Safety, we do what we want. What do we have here? Oh, 10 days in the county jail. Okay, this one was really bad. Tom Wilson sneezed in the general direction of Sidney Crosby. Let's see what that gets the hooligan from Washington. Oh! 10,000 lashes with a whip made from horsehair to be completed at sunset every day from now until the end of time. You get the point. The Department of Player Safety is a total shit show, and the Caps are just going to have to deal with it as they have been dealing with it for the last, 45 years. This is not going to change, especially not so long as Gary Bettman is the commissioner. So outside of that changing, we're all just going to have to put up with it. It's so inconsistent, it's so frustrating, but there's nothing that we can really do about it other than just go play hockey. So the Caps have been doing a very good job of that in these playoffs, and hopefully they can continue, and hopefully in game number 4, they can get back to what they were doing so well in games number 1 and games number 2, games number 1 and 2, which is really the same thing that they were doing in game 3. They just didn't have any puck luck go their way in game 3. So they've been playing well for the entire series, really, the entire playoffs, really. So hope to just see more of the same in game number 4, and hopefully this time with a few bounces going our way. Hope to see you all there.